Okay, sophomores. So I want to remind you guys that your formative needs to be done today. It's in the file for first and second period on the school's Southwest Leadership Academy page. So make sure that you guys are completing your formatives because you need those points. Plus, I need to see how well you are growing with the standards that we've been working on. Remember, next Monday, you all will be starting your Jack London to Build the Fire unit. You should be receiving the short story in the next couple of days, tomorrow or Saturday. There'll be a packet coming to your home. And you can start reading your story. There will be comprehension questions and an element worksheet for you to complete. And so before we get to that, I wanted to do a little biography, backstory on Jack London, so that you understand his movement into naturalism and determinism, which will make it easier to read your story because you'll have a bit more knowledge of his background. So, we're going to talk about Jack London now. His early life. He was born in San Francisco, California in the late 1800s after the end of the Civil War. His mother was an unwed mother and his father was an attorney. And he also was a pioneer in astrology, the new field of astrology that was happening at the time, which of course we know later will be called astronomy. His relationship with his family was not very strong or connected. His father was never a part of his life. His mother married John London, who was a Civil War vet, and Jack took his name, and then they moved to Oakland, California. When Jack was a teenager, with no real family influence, he was forced to live a life on the road. He shoveled coal. He worked on a sealing ship, hunting seals. He worked in a cannery, canning food, and pirating oysters. These were all jobs that he had at a very young age. Surprisingly, though, as he got a little bit older, it was his mother was the one that pressed him and pushed him into being a writer. So as you start to read the story, you'll notice some elements in his story of survival and how the character has a sort of fond recollection of his mother in the story. He only had an 8th grade competition, but at the time, even though he was competing against college level students, he won this contest, and that's what persuaded him to pursue a writing career. Due to having a little close family contact, he was mainly self-educated. Most of his knowledge, guys, came from living a life out into the world, observing and doing things. He did go back to high school, and he helped to publish articles in the school's paper. So what a journey he had. He was in school, he left school, he went out into the world, he learned a lot of things, he came back, excuse me, and went back to high school. He often studied at Heinel's First and Last Chance Saloon. The saloon on the left was how it looked when it was originally created, and now the saloon is still there now, which is really neat. So that'd be 160, 170 years of this saloon. He also told the owner of the saloon that he had great desire to attend college for writing. Now check this out. The saloon owner knew Jack well, and I guess Jack had influenced him in some ways. He gave Jack money to go to college. So now he was set on going to the University of California, and he was accepted in 1896, but after a short while, due to a financial situation, he never graduated, and he left school. July 12, 1887, saw Jack and his brother-in-law, Captain Shepard. They traveled all the way from California to the Yukon in Canada. They were there to test out their luck in finding gold. There was the gold rush, the gold fever happening right then. Thousands of men went up to Canada and Alaska to try and strike it rich, and of course most people failed. Jack unfortunately had the same luck. Health became a real problem due to poor nourishment, and there was scurvy up there. Scurvy is a disease that happens with a lack of vitamin C. He returned in 1998 to find that his stepfather had died, sparking desire for him to start writing so that he could support his mother. So that's pretty interesting, I think. His time in the Yukon influenced many of his future novels, which you guys are going to find out as you start reading next week. His success achieved writing off the basis of his time spent up north, and this was pretty incredible for him. He used his experiences to write. The Call of the Wild is a very, very great book. Many of you have probably read it in middle school or freshman year. And To Build the Fire. This is the short story that you will be starting to read next week. And these are survival stories that have to do with living in these extreme conditions in the north. New technology, low cost, high demand, and great interest in the short fiction novel helped Jack considerably. In 1900, he made the equivalent of $71,000 today. It was not only books he was writing, but also magazines that were sold. Magazines were much more popular in the 19th and 20th century than they are now. Especially since we have online technology. Most people read online, but magazines were a big hit then. There were other novels that were written by Jack London, such as The Cruise of the Snark and The Iron Heel. All of these had to do with travels in the northern part of North America. There are different themes and central concepts to these three books. They are all based on totally separate events, but experiences in Jack's life. It seems that they can be connected based on the fact that they all strive to make good out of the situation present and overcome difficulties in their lives. Which, if you watch the video yesterday that I posted on naturalism, you'll know that that is the central tenet of naturalism. That people are living basic, mundane lives and are having to overcome difficulties. Jack had many influences on his writing. He was set on socialism as a political ideology due to his own poverty and that of those around him. He always wrote about main experiences in his life and primarily about those that affected him greatly. His family situation and their financial problems also impacted him largely. Jack London was first married in 1900 to Bess Mattern. They had 2 daughters. And then he divorced a few years later and married Charmian Kittredge. Here's a couple of pictures. You'll notice as you read To Build a Fire that he has an absence of feminine energy or female characters in this story. And most of his stories are that way. And I wonder if it had to do with his relationship with his mother and his failed marriages to women. Some people see Jack as being one of the most romantic people of his time. He bought 2 farms in 1911. The house of one would burn down. He refused to listen to his doctors about his health and drinking problems, mostly to do with his financial situation. So I suppose all of these financial issues drove him to become an alcoholic. There are a number of pieces that he wrote over his particular time period. He wrote over 20 novels, over 50 poems, 25 plus nonfiction stories and essays, hundreds of short stories, 3 plays, and 3 autobiographical memoirs or biographies about his life that he wrote about himself. So that is pretty cool. He was a very prolific author despite all of the things that were happening to him in his life. There are some of these stories you probably know: Call the Wild, White Fang, The Iron Heel, Cruise of the Dazzler, Martin Eden, Before Adam, The Scarlet Plague, The Game, Sea Wolf is another very popular one, The Abysmal Brute, The Valley of the Moon, The Star Rover, Burning Daylight, A Daughter of the Snows. So, gosh, he wrote all of these by the time he was the age of 40 years old. He had many health problems, including kidney disease, which he died from at the young age of 40 in 1916. His profuse alcohol drinking was probably a large part of this happening to him. Here's a picture of him on his ranch. Looks like he's looking over one of his pieces. He was a journalist who wrote about the Russian-Japanese War. He wrote about surfing, which initiated or started in Hawaii, in the Hawaiian Islands with the tribal peoples there, indigenous Hawaiians, and he helped to introduce it to America. He lectured and did lessons on problems with capitalism. He was also a pioneer in the commercial fiction magazine world. And he was passionate about companies unionizing, so unionization, and socialism throughout his life. His legacy. He's been honored in many ways. There's a Mount London, which is a little mountain that was named after him. There's the Jack London Square in Oakland, California. And there's a Jack London Lake in Russia. So he has had some cultural influence. And here's some of the sources. If you guys want to click on these or copy and paste them into Google, you can go to these websites and learn a little bit more information. Now, there are a bunch of questions for you guys to answer in your comprehension questions for the short story. They are broken down into chapters, and they are also in readable order. So as you're reading, if you follow along with your comprehension questions, you can find the questions in order as the story progresses. I'm expecting you guys to get finished in 2 weeks, because I've also sent you other materials too to be doing next week, including your formative next Thursday. I hope that you guys have started on your formative already for this week. It is due, everything is due tomorrow. So please make sure you either screenshot, email me, or you physically take your packet with your completed work, not just for my class, but all of your classes, and send it back to the school. If you have any questions, be sure to email me at patnewley@gmail.com. You can also contact me at patrick.newley@rop.com. I will be posting more videos. I want to make sure that you guys are completing all of your work so that you can make sure to get your credits for this semester. This is for first and second period, you sophomores, so we want to make sure that you guys are completing so that you don't have to attend summer school and you can move on with your next English credits. On this next screen here, there are a couple of YouTube links of videos of video biographies about Jack London and his life, so that you can see how important of an author he was in naturalism and in American history in general. So the next video I will post for this class will be on Monday. It will be to talk a bit more about Jack London and to build a fire. I think that this video will be a direct summary of the story which will help to give you background information on the main characters and some of the themes in the story, in which you'll have to actually write about in your elements worksheet once you get finished with your story. I would like you guys to start submitting your work. We've got to get grades in the grade book. We've only got a few more weeks left of school. That's probably, after this week, we'll have 7 more weeks left. So make sure that you guys are here every day, getting on, using your phone or computer, etc., completing these assignments, and ready to go. So thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon.